You're listening to East of the Rockies, the Michigan Student Softball Podcast on WCBN Sports.
Well, Mr. Burns had done it, the power plant had won it, with Roger Clemens clucking all the while. Mike Scioscia's tragic illness made us smile. While Wade Boggs lay unconscious on the barroom tile, we're talking softball. From Maine to San Diego, talking softball. Mattingly and Canseco, Ken Griffey's grotesquely swollen jaw. Steve Saxon is running with the law. We're talking Homer, Ozzie and the Straw.
Do we need to go into the second verse?
No, I don't think we need to. East of the Rockies, Season 2, EP4. Yeah, a bit of a jank setup. First of all, if you're still listening, that's great.
We have a viewer. Is that us?
No, we have a live viewer. I'm not sure who this is. We're actually recording via YouTube right now. All of the studio space is booked up in WCBN in the Gloom Tomb, so we are in a back office with all of the equipment.
Like
so yeah, more like a kind of like a fix-it station, like a boneyard of old radio equipment.
Literally a drill right like above you.
So we're gonna take our kind of interesting situation and still make an episode out of it. Jeremy Parks, Morris Fabry, Alex Drain, and Lucas Vargas finally making his way onto East of the Rockies, and maybe you're a bad luck charm.
Better late than never, I guess.
I guess. But so we've got like 4 headsets plugged into a little recording mixer into our laptop like we do with normal softball broadcasts. It is really jank. Also, if you can hear some background music, that's what's currently playing on the 88.3 airwaves. It's like some kind of techno music.
I'd hesitate to place a genre on it.
Yeah, that's also fair. So if you catch any of that throughout the broadcast, it's because we're in the back office and we can't figure out how to turn it off without turning it off on the actual radio. But okay, episode 4. First of all of you can eat it because the bull finally rides successfully.
I called 5-0 this weekend too, JP.
Well, all of you can finally hop on board my train.
I think we're always going to win. I think we're going undefeated.
Yeah.
Personal opinion, we're never losing. Ever. That's the outlook I always have going in.
Yeah, we're all on the bull with you, JP.
People have, for a long time...
We're not just on the bull with you, we're grabbing the bull by the horns.
For a long time, people have not been with me. And
Lucas
that's all.
Lucas is normally on the bull, but
Lucas is also just like less of the way I'm on the bull and more of just like I think he enjoys it because he gets to use all of his little like sayings and idioms like.
Oh, we got some of those popped up. Don't worry.
Yeah. But anyways, Lucas, you haven't been on yet.
I have
correct?
Not. I have not.
So just introduce yourself for the listeners for just a second, like where you're from. What you like about this softball team so far, that kind of thing.
All right, my name is Lucas Vargas. I am from Austin, Texas, and I am a proud Michigan Wolverine and a member of the East of the Rockies group now. I have enjoyed watching softball because it's kind of a unique college game, more so than anything. I like this team because of their pitching. I love pitching. Pitching is the best part about baseball or softball. And this team is pretty good at it. And I had the opportunity to cover the team at the Texas Invitational down in Austin, Texas, which was phenomenal to go back home and get to call some Michigan games down in the hometown.
Now, Lucas, I got to ask you, did you know what you were signing up for when you signed up to do 5 solo broadcasts over the course of one weekend?
Truthfully, I had no idea. I think my experience broadcasting any games had ranged from about 2 men's basketball games and about 5 or 6 women's basketball games, along with a couple water polo games in there, all of which I had a partner in. So calling games individually was a very unique challenge, but it was a challenge that I was ready to accept, and I think that I got better, as did the team throughout the weekend. So a little hand-in-hand improvement going on down in Austin, Texas.
Performed valiantly, if I don't say so myself. Drain? Yeah. I haven't heard from you yet. How's it going? Just kind of looking over at me like we're so out of our element where we're at right now. But yeah, 5-0, eat it. To those of you that were
Well,
not.
we missed 2 weekends, so
Hmm?
we have 2 things to cover.
Yes, we do. I forgot that we were on spring break. I was in Scandinavia. Turns out Sweden does have a softball team. Couldn't find them, but I Googled it while I was there. They exist. How was everybody else's break?
I didn't
Good.
have a break.
Well, yeah, that's right.
I live in
yeah.
the real world now.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Drain?
Relaxing.
Yeah. Lucas?
I like college basketball.
Yeah, we got to celebrate a Big Ten tournament championship.
Indeed
Big
we
Ten
did.
championship.
Indeed we
I don't
did.
care about the tournament part.
But back to softball. Sorry, I had to ask really quick. Lucas, you want to start us off with 2 weeks ago?
All right, sure thing. It was a fun weekend down in Austin. I will say I was a little shocked when I first landed down. I landed on Thursday night, the 22nd, and the fog really took me back initially. As I was flying in, you could not even see the buildings down in the city. That's how foggy it was.
It was an omen.
It was really weird. So the games initially got delayed on Friday morning, which it was a very rainy day on Friday down in Austin. So Michigan started things off with a 2-0 win against Virginia Tech. Both of those runs were generated individually, one in the second and one in the fifth. And that was their first game. It was a pretty good pitching battle between Megan Bobian, and the Hokies also have an impressive freshman pitcher, Jordan Dale. She was pretty good. Good player to watch. And then later that night, they took on the host team, the Texas Longhorns, which was a good game in itself. The Longhorns were able to get 3 runs on the board via a home run in the bottom of the third inning. That came off a home run from their catcher, who isn't really that big of a hitter, but she got this big left field shot over the fence for 3 RBIs.
Yep.
So that was an impressive win for the Longhorns, who haven't had the best season themselves. But that put Michigan at 1-1. They went 1-1 again on Saturday, but things kind of started to change. It started off kind of disappointing, an extra innings loss to Virginia Tech, a team they had beaten before. So they lost that game 1-0, and it was disappointing because that meant the Wolverines had scored 2 runs in a total of 3 games. But somewhere in between the Virginia Tech game and their next game against Wichita State, they really woke up. They put 11 runs on the board in 4.5 innings against the Shockers. Very impressive, and I thought it was really impressive because the Shockers had kind of a good weekend coming into that. They almost beat Ohio State. They lost 3-4, and then they actually beat Texas the night before, 7-5, and then they come out and lose 0-11 to Michigan. So again, it was a really weird kind of flip there, but I guess since that game, Michigan's bats have just really been kind of consistently hacking away.
Yeah, maybe that was a sign of things to come. Wichita was not one of the teams that I necessarily expected Michigan to roll over going into that weekend. And, yeah, looking back, it seems like that's where they righted the ship. There was certainly nowhere to go but up after scoring 2 runs in the first 3 games against kind of mediocre competition.
Well,
but
funny story, I'd actually told my sister had a basketball game on Saturday, and I was like, I'll try and make it after this Wichita State game. I told my dad, I was like, Michigan's going to mercy rule Wichita State. I'm feeling it. And then I saw their first 3 games, and I was really doubting my prediction, but then they followed through. And then they finished the weekend up on Sunday with a win against Texas in the final game. That offense kind of carried over, 4 runs in the second inning, was able to generate a 4-0 victory. One player that I was really impressed with was Katie Alexander, the catcher for us.
This is like officially the We Love Katie Alexander podcast, I think.
Yeah,
like every
really.
single week there's something to really like.
Well, her batting average was not too sharp heading into the tournament, but coming out of it, I think she boosted her average by at least well over 100 points for sure.
But she's also been very good behind the plate defensively.
Oh yeah, no, she was very good at that. but
Yep.
As far as her bat went, that's what I was the most impressed with, and she got some big hits in key situations as well. She was a big part of both the good offensive games against Texas and Wichita State, but even in the first 3 games, she was still finding ways to get on base. So it was really encouraging to see that. And all around, I thought, especially in that last game against Texas,
where they were able to finish it off. I think it was Texas' first time they had a losing record in their tournament for at least a while, if not the first time. But that was just really encouraging to see Michigan just kind of finish the weekend off, get the job done, and then head back here before they went out to California to basically start a 7-game win streak.
They were on cruise control, and I think it all starts with the girl who still has to be the main story of the season for the Wolverines, and that's Megan Beaubien, who is still putting up ridiculous numbers game after game against high-level competition. And I did a little bit of research. I was going to write an article, but I was way too lazy to follow through on it. Comparing the slow start of the Wolverines to teams past, both in Michigan history and across college softball in the last few years, to see how Michigan compared as far as the numbers they were putting up. Well, they were by far the worst offense of any Carol Hutchins team, but also one of the best pitching staffs, even compared with College World Series teams. And this Michigan team is not shutting down just the Illinois states on their schedule. They're shutting down the likes of Baylor, Louisiana, Lafayette, and it's all behind Megan Beaubien.
Yeah, man, as the kids say.
And that's a good transition into the discussion of the Fullerton series. It was a little bit different of a series than the Texas ones because Wolverines did score 28 runs in the 5 games across them.
I prefer it that way.
And they also didn't have, absolute shutout performances from Megan Beaubien. She did surrender some runs, but they were able to overcome that and still be able to win some games. Didn't get off to the best start of all time against Loyola Marymount. In that first game, they gave up a 2-run home run. Beaubien did in the second inning. Michigan tied it with a Blanco single in the 5th, and then another Blanco single in the 7th got them that run. But that was a big sign of the crucial hitting they've been lacking to be able to scratch that winning run across in the 7th inning. So it got them a 3-2 win. Beaubien went the distance for the W in that one. But then later in the day, they played Charlotte. Blanco was very good, 4 hits, 2 walks over 5 scoreless. Sarah Schaefer came in, 1 hit and 2 scoreless, and they were able to win that one 5-0. That was also notable for Lou Allen's debut.
Yeet!
She is finally healthy from that knee problem. She came into the game and got a huge 2-run single to give Michigan a 2-0 lead. Canfield tacked on 2 more with a single, and then she had another single in the 6th to make it 5-0 was the final in that one. And they carried that momentum into really their biggest day of the entire season. 2 wins over top 20 teams. The first over a top 10 squad in Baylor handed the Bears their first loss of the season in a 6-3 victory. Started very strong, where Faith Canfield, Natalie Peters got on, and Tara Blanco, 3-run shot to take the early lead. A Canfield homer made it 4-0. They added 2 more to make it 6-0, and that gave them the padding to really have it not be that close. Even when Beaubien gave up a 3-run home run in the 6th inning, they still won 6-3, and then they came right back out and against Louisiana Lafayette. Same thing, started very strong. A Canfield home run, then a Canfield 2-run single. Yeah,
you're saying Canfield a lot.
All the offense.
Yeah, from the start of from the end of the Loyola Marymount game into like the middle of Louisiana Lafayette, every time Faith Canfield went up to bat, she got a hit. She was 4 for 4 against Charlotte. She was 4 for 4 against Baylor. I wasn't following along that closely for Louisiana Lafayette, but apparently her string of 11 straight at bats with a hit ended when she tried to bunt to get on base, which is a shame. I'm not a big fan of bunts.
And
I don't think we ever have been.
No.
We're also an anti-bunt podcast.
The other thing about that game, Sarah Schaefer did get the start. She ran into a lot of trouble against a good team in Louisiana Lafayette, gave up 3 hits, 2 walks, but was able to pitch out of the jam. One thing she's shown is the art of pitching, to get out of jams when runners get on. And then Blanco came in with 4 huge innings, 2 hits given up, no walks, just 1 run, and then they turned to their best pitcher, Megan Beaubien. She came in for the clutch save in the final inning with 1 strikeout to close out the Ragin' Cajuns. And from that point, it was really just a matter of beating a pretty bad Cal Poly team. Michigan got way out early, went up 8-0, and then Cal Poly did add a couple runs at the end there. It was an 11-3 run rule game. But some interesting homers from Maddie Uden. Also, Abby Skvars had the walk-off run rule clinching home run.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone started to kind of get involved in that one. Aiden Falk also had a home run in that game. So Michigan diversified the offense in that 11-3 victory. Beaubien got her 10th win of the season, and they close out the 7-game win streak.
And I'm a numbers guy. What was that final weekend tally? Was that what was? Tell me, please.
What a 5-0?
Because I forgot. I'm sorry. One more time.
5-0.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, 5-0.
And it was really what they needed. They needed a strong series where they sweep all the way through. They get those 2 big quality wins. And the big thing is we're going to talk about non-conference college softball later on in this podcast. But as a whole, if Michigan wants to find a way to host a regional, this went a long way to it because they're not going to get a lot of wins over good teams in the Big Ten. And the rest of their non-conference, there's no one on the schedule. So this gave them 2 out of really their 3 big wins of the non-conference season to give them a case to be in the top 16 and to host a regional down the line.
I think going along with what you noted from the California trip was also some things that I did observe in Texas, as well as the ability to kind of navigate stressful situations with runners in scoring position. When you really look at the ways that Virginia Tech scored that one run that they won within extra innings, it was the runner on second that was able to advance, and then just an unfortunate bunt, unable to make the play. And then in the Texas game, the 3 runs were scored on a home run. So not like a lot of hits given up though with runners at third or runners at second. They do a good job limiting the damage. And Madison Uden was the other player I forgot to mention that I was impressed with. I thought especially her last 2 games against Wichita State and Texas, very, very solid contributions for the Wolverines from her.
So now, moving forward, smooth sailing. Nye?
We think.
We think. The bull knows. You all think.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's enough in that last weekend to convince me that the offense is, a lot better than what it was in the first 15 games.
Well, let's take a look at stats for a minute, because in our second episode, which is the last one where we were really all together, we had that sort of weird fragmented one where Kev called in episode 3, but
yeah,
we talked about small sample sizes. And so we're going to kind of revisit that here for a minute, looking at the batting averages. Canfield up to 358. She is now with 4 homers on the season. Aiden Falk, 333, 3 homers on the year. I think the big thing for that series to me in terms of advancing the offense is now there is a middle of the order that's really stepping up and driving in runs, and that was something we needed to see. Tara Blanco's raised her average up to 300. She's got a couple homers, mostly coming this past weekend. So those are 3 big middle of the rotation, or middle of the lineup. But we've even seen, Natalie Peters is now up to 275. She's not a power threat, but she's been able to get on at times and was able to score some big runs in that series. Katie Alexander, 244,
yeah, I think
makes up with it for her defense, but
for sure she's got plenty of power, and I think what it comes down to is there is sort of a rising tide lifts all boat effect as far as people hitting well in a given lineup. We see it when big bats leave the team, how that affects the performances of others at the plate in ways that you might not normally expect. More people are getting on base, more people are power threats, there's more pressure on defenses, more pressure on pitchers, and it kind of has a cumulative effect. So, the likes of Canfield and Blanca really getting it going at the plate might be more beneficial than just raising their stats and, hitting a couple home runs there.
Maddie Uden is also now up to 313 on the season. She's really raised her case. And again, we can't, I don't think, understate how big getting Lou Allen back is. Especially because they've struggled at that designated player position to find somebody. Amanda Vargas has really struggled this season.
And no doubt, but again, you look at the freshman class that's come in, and again, we're going back to the small sample size kind of idea for Lou Allen at the moment, but the second she steps into the game, you get a couple ribs in the back pocket there, and it's, off to the races. So stacked up with Beaubien, stacked up with Schaefer, stacked up, all the freshmen that have come in and have really kind of put this team in a position where, like we were just talking about, they could still be looking at hosting a regional come the end of this season. I think that is just so beyond impressive for a group of freshmen to really, I don't know if this is maybe overstating, but really carrying the load at times for this team this year.
Yeah, it's definitely refreshing. I can't remember in my 3-ish years of covering the team any single freshman having the impact that these have, much less, a trio or an entire recruiting class.
Right.
Natalia Rodriguez, too, has done some
We
work
should also
for the team.
point out Taylor Bump finally started to mix in as well. She didn't do too well, 1 of 14, but, you never just have to see how they mix in and getting them plate appearances. Not everyone's going to hit right off the bat. So that's sort of... Now, I think we're just kind of starting to see the lineup round into form a little bit. We still have to see, where Allen will slot in. Presumably, it'll just be a designated player. She was a first baseman in high school, and at the current moment, looks like Blanco is kind of occupying that for the most part. But I also think one thing we have to watch in the coming weeks, though, is, Beaubien still 1.08 ERA. She gave up runs in California to raise it to an astronomically high.
How dare she?
But she did give up a couple home runs, and that was something I have alluded to in the past, of just the potential for when you throw that hard, that when they barrel it up, that there can be hard contact. So it'll be interesting to see going forward, but obviously she continues to just be a workhorse.
Yeah, I think that was something that, Morris and I always saw in past years with Megan Betza being a pretty, relatively hard thrower, but also really shut down a lot of strikeouts, obviously, those numbers through the roof in the K column, but did always seem to have some kind of, prone situations where she would give up solo home runs here or there, and I don't know exactly if it's just the hard throwing or just the way that they both kind of tend to attack hitters going over the plate maybe a little bit harder, but Beaubien has seemed to kind of avoid going right over the plate as much as I can remember Megan Betza doing in the past, at least to this point. But it's also been hard because I haven't been able to see physically all of the games. Just about half of them I think I've actually seen real footage from so far at the start of the season. But again, I think it's just very kind of similar in style and form in that sense.
Yeah, the lack of any visual data sort of limits our analyses on these podcasts. But, I mean, when it comes down to it, it also could just be some bad luck. A couple fly balls here that instead of being doubles were blown over the fence by some wind, and that totally changes our outlook on a player. And, I mean, she's doing so well in every other respect of pitching that I feel like
absolutely.
It's not really a weakness so much as an area where she's not quite as strong as the rest of her body.
No knocking anyway. But like I said, we hadn't seen as many of the games, but we are finally almost to the point where we get softball back at Alumni. Looking forward to the end of non-conference play and getting into conference play. I don't know. I'm excited. I think it seems to be, at this point, the bat's heating up right as Michigan is going to start facing a lot softer competition. So your guys' thoughts, I guess, we'll kind of move into the coming weekend here. Boca Raton starts tomorrow, Friday. Actually, almost today. We're going to be bumping up on midnight by the time we're done in here. Yeah, not a really strong schedule. But your guys' thoughts on another 5-game weekend for Maize and Blue out in Boca with Lane Kiffin?
Well, it might not be the strongest schedule, but let me tell you cannot overlook the little guys or else you'll trip over them. It's something that I have definitely noticed during my time watching sports. So they just need to keep their foot on the gas, is what I would say.
How do you do that?
By continuing the pitching that's been very, very effective. We've already talked about that. But we would love to see the bats continue to bring in some runs, and I like to see early starts. I think if you, especially these first few games, like the Friday games, if they can just come out immediately and get some early runs in, first, second, third inning, get some early runs in, that just shows engagement from the plate, shows all around locked in and focus from a team, and it would just be a really encouraging sign to see a team that we expect to be good now just take care of business.
I think something that might help with that, with getting some offensive rhythm, is establishing some sort of a concrete lineup. We saw that Hutch really wasn't able to do that last year. There just weren't enough players who were playing well enough consistently to claim spots, but I think that also could go a long way. If not for, building teams, building players, confidence in their own roles in the lineup, just finding what works best, most optimally.
Consistency.
I'll agree with that. I mean, starting strong is important. Also, just continuing to get clutch hits and power, especially, because we had seen times where it was just singles. If we can start to see more doubles, homers, gap type power, that's big as well, because that can solve your runners and scoring position problem.
So here's a question for you all. I guess we've talked a lot about the players who have shined so far. Obviously, not everybody on the team has gotten out to as strong a start as some others, but as you get into this kind of what I would call almost a tune-up time before you get into kind of like the meat of Big Ten play, who do you think stands to gain the most from these games? Who stands to improve the most over the next couple, and how do they do that?
Well, I think whatever the plan is for third base, that remains the biggest gaping hole to me in the lineup. Because, again, Uden has taken steps forward at shortstop. Seems like she has started, because we saw some Natalia Rodriguez earlier in the year, but it's starting to seem like Uden is going to seize that shortstop role. And if Allen is taking over designated player for the most part, I mean, at third base is still a bit of an issue. Taylor Swearingen is just probably never going to be an everyday player. And Subject just hasn't quite done enough. We've now started to see a little bit of Taylor bump. Maybe they move Rodriguez over there. I'm not really sure what their ultimate plan is, but whoever can step up and take ownership of the third base position, I think, can really stand to gain quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the other spot to be claimed is probably somewhere in the outfield. I mean, Natalie Peters, I think, is the only real solid, consistent offensive contributor out in center, but Falk is fine out and right. She's not maybe the best defender out there, but need her bat in the lineup. But out in left field, no one's really emerged between the likes of Haley Hoganrod, Thais Gonzalez. Still waiting on Courtney Richardson to get some burn.
Yeah, we've kind of popped at that at different points so far, but yeah, no C. Rich to this point really.
She played a little bit down in Austin.
Yeah, just very, very limited kind of appearances. So
yeah, I mean, and we've seen Subject at third base. We've seen Swearingen at third base. Left field is really kind of an unknown commodity. No one with real legit starting experience who's sort of tailored to step into that spot. It's really up for grabs.
I liked Haley Hoganrod down in Austin from what I saw. Thought she did a good job in that spot.
Well, she'll have her chance and then some.
Anyone's game. Down in Boca Raton, they will face 5 teams. Stony Brook, the Seawolves.
I've got a guest lecture next week from Stony Brook.
They were just in town for women's lacrosse. They're #1 in the country.
Yeah. What are they in softball?
That's what
not.
Mel Warney went to school.
Yeah, they are not ranked in softball. 4-6 on the season. They're one of the easier teams in this tournament. They really haven't played anybody at all, and obviously having only played.
Don't talk about Florida Gulf Coast like that.
They have played somebody, Alex. They're 4-10 or 4-6.
Yeah, they've played 10 games, but
they've played 10 people.
So they are one of the easier games. That will be followed by the hosts, FAU. FAU has played some Big Ten teams. They beat MSU, shut them out. They got run-ruled by Ohio State. They beat Purdue, which isn't much of a feat. And
engineers.
They did beat McNeese State, and McNeese State's been ranked pretty much this year.
Is McNeese State kind of like that random school this year that's like good?
They're in the top 25. I was
I feel like they beat LSU.
Where is I think Tennessee.
Yeah,
Tennessee.
I'd put money on Tennessee.
Isn't that where Joe Dumars went?
I don't know.
McNeese?
Maybe.
First, we have to know where they're from.
But yeah, FAU doesn't look like a total walkover, but they also got beaten pretty handily by LSU. They lost the first 2 games of this tournament, which were played today against Ball State and Pitt. So that's still a team Michigan should beat, but not a super easy one. You can argue the toughest team in this tournament is going to be Ball State. They're 13-7 on the year.
9 a.m. Rise and Shiner.
Yes. They've beaten NC State. They had a chance to measure themselves against Oklahoma, got canceled. I mean, they're a fine team. They beat Virginia Tech, who Michigan lost to. So they beat FAU. So we'll get to see them. Pitt, also a factor potentially. They're 13-7. You can argue is the best team. It's either them or Ball State.
No matter the sport, Pitt always comes up with an upset.
Yeah.
Every year.
Not in basketball.
Always good for it.
0-19 in
This year,
ACC
yeah.
basketball. So.
By the way, McNeese State, public regional university located in. Do you guys want to take one more guess
Is it
on state?
Mississippi?
No. Lucas, you want to take one more guess?
Kentucky.
No. Morris?
Alabama.
Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. They've got 7,600 students, 6,900 undergraduates. Nice. So, yeah, good opponent there.
Pitt also played some Big Ten teams because there was the Big Ten ACC Challenge. They split a series with Illinois, split a series with Wisconsin. They beat Rutgers.
Oh.
They've beaten NC State a couple
Does anybody
games.
not? Has anybody not beat Rutgers yet this year?
I will update you on that.
I don't know
in a
if
little
Florida's
bit when we
beaten
talk about
Rutgers
Big
yet.
Ten.
It's, yeah. Florida lost to Maryland. People forget that, you know?
And then Florida A&M's the worst team in this tournament. They're the last game of the tournament. There's a Sunday at 11:15 a.m. That should be just an easy warm-up to go home.
Their logo is by far the coolest, though.
The Rattlers.
This snake, that's like an intimidating, scary snake.
Art.
Yeah. I like
So
that.
this series as a whole, again, there are teams that you can trip on. Ball State, Pitt, FAU potentially. But it is a series where I think the expectation has to be 5-0.
One more question really quick. Did Florida A&M lose to Maryland?
Let's see who they played.
No. Did Florida Atlantic lose to Maryland?
I don't think any of these teams have played.
No, but Florida did.
Yes, but Florida did.
Yeah, people forget
Last
that.
year.
Last
Yeah.
year.
They actually did play Maryland this year and won 12.
Florida A&M
Yeah, I haven't brought that one up intentionally.
Florida A&M did play Rutgers though, and they won. So.
Hey.
But they've also lost 2 to Radford and to Kennesaw State.
Hey, Radford, big shot.
And got swept
Against
by
the
Morehead
tournament.
State. So
Okay.
not Florida A&M, not the.
So, just a reminder, we're not going to have any of those games in Boca this weekend, but after that, we've got everything coming down the pipe from Oxford on through. We're looking at our first home game finally coming up on
Less than 2 weeks away.
Wednesday the 21st.
Playing the Chips.
Fire up Chips.
Those Oxford games will essentially be home games.
Yeah,
Softball crowds travel well.
I'm really looking forward to getting to use IUPU IFW next week in our previews. So
That could stand for so many things.
I think I added an extra I in there as well. Now that I think about
Is
it,
it
but
just IUPU
FW.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I said IUPU IFW.
That would be Indianapolis.
Yeah. Anyways.
and Fort Wayne.
Okay, so final predictions for the weekend in Boca.
Straight dubs.
Lucas.
5-zip.
All right.
Yeah, I'm saying 5-0.
4-1.
Kev predicted
Losing to
4-1.
who?
Doesn't matter who they play. They're going to lose to themselves, JP. They're fatigued. They've been traveling all
That
over
brings
the
up
country.
that's a good point. Every game is not a competition against the other team. It's a competition against yourself. It's all about competing with yourself. Compete.
One game, Michigan's going to, give up a solo shot. The bats just aren't going to get going.
You have to go
1-0.
undefeated against yourself.
And then they'll go.
I feel like you're just doing this
They'll go
to-
47-7 on the season.
You're just
but
doing this to avoid having to be
they're
in my
not in the
club.
final form yet.
You just don't want to be in my club with me.
Grab the bull by the
JP,
horn.
I've been off by 2 total games this season with my predictions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've been a bit of a downer. So
I've been
far.
off by, what do we have, 6 losses?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been off by 6.
So have I. Grab the
Um,
bull by the horns.
yeah, no, it's a 5-0 weekend
Straight dubs.
right out of the oven.
So we're just tacking the interviews on the end of all this?
Yeah, so we got to figure out, because we're on YouTube live broadcast,
I think it needs to be acknowledged for the listeners.
so what we're going to attempt to do, here's the game plan. Again, we don't edit, we don't cut, we go straight on through, Except we did add a bleep once for an F-bomb. Sorry, Mom. But our plan is, because we're on YouTube right now, we're going to try and extract the YouTube audio and put it into Audacity, which is our normal audio program. And then from there, we would be able to add the interviews on and make like one condensed audio file to put on SoundCloud like normal. If that doesn't work, then we're going to leave up this YouTube video, and that's probably how you'll be listening to it this week on YouTube. And then we'll add the interviews as like addendums. We can add them in separate videos.
We'll make it work one way or another.
Yeah. So we've got really good interviews from Morris with, if you want to give the rundown, go ahead.
Hutch, Lou Allen, and Sarah Schaefer. If I gave any more of a rundown than that, it would spoil the interviews. Also, I kind of forgot half of the answers.
Yeah, you didn't get yelled at by Hutch this week.
No.
Yeah.
She had already exhausted that on the Daily, folks, before I got over to the table. Wanted to interview Tara Blanco, who had a fantastic weekend.
Yeah.
But she had to get to a meeting, and so got to
fair.
skip her media obligation. We'll get her next week.
Put the student in student athlete.
But
The Michigan difference.
we don't get to do the interviews yet.
Yes, we have more things.
We have more things.
Go.
We do.
So, over a break, I was scouting college softball. I made a fancy spreadsheet.
Oh, remind me before. So after we're done with this, I have a little quick one as well.
Okay. We got time.
Yeah.
We're not tired yet.
No.
I got work at 8 in the morning, but you know.
Picking up a minivan for the baseball crew going to Lipscomb in Nashville at 7 a.m. But
isn't there a game today?
Team No Sleep.
Or tomorrow for.
Yeah, they're gonna get there in time. They're gonna leave at 7 a.m. and they'll get to Nashville by
Is it a night game?
5 Eastern is the start time. So
5 o'clock somewhere.
Yep.
So
Margaritaville.
yeah, I made a fancy
Yeet.
spreadsheet looking at the good wins of top 25 teams and
Okay.
their losses, just to kind of see where Michigan is stacking up at this current point. They didn't move up a whole lot in the polls, but from what I can tell, I'm not really trusting the people who do softball polls. They don't seem too clued in on what's going on. But what I've kind of come down with is obviously they're not right now like a team like Washington that's undefeated, or a UCLA. Or a Florida, obviously, even though they were pretty close to Florida when we saw them play. But in terms of resume, Michigan, though, does have quite a few good wins. And that's the big takeaway from this, is you have a team like Ohio State, for instance. Ohio State's lost only one game this season, but they also haven't beaten anybody. And so like their best win, Ohio State's best win is North Carolina State, who is not a very good team. And they have one loss, but like, are they good? Are they not? Like, it's tough to tell. So, Michigan, I think, in the path to getting a regional, rests in staying clean the rest of the way and limiting as many letdown losses as you can.
I think they have the pitching for it.
If they can establish consistency and show that, you know, early in the season when they were dropping, you know, games to USF or whoever, if they can run very cleanly through the Big Ten, I think they'll have a good shot at hosting a regional, because having those big wins over teams like a FSU and a Baylor and a Louisiana, those are 3 really good wins on the resume. And other teams, you know, there's a lot of teams, and Auburn doesn't really have that many. Texas A&M doesn't, Arizona doesn't, LSU doesn't. Like, they have actually an impressive amount of good wins. They also have a lot of losses compared to other top teams.
That's master researcher
And then
Alex Drain.
looking at the Big Ten,
Drain in the drain.
just to check in. Before the season, we talked about how the teams Michigan plays in the Big Ten regular season are last year's bottom teams.
Mm-hmm.
They're this year's bottom teams, too. Michigan will go to Penn State in April. Penn State is 1-12 in non-conference play. Michigan will host Purdue here coming up pretty soon in late March. Purdue is 2-16 in non-conference play. Michigan will go to Indiana late in the season. Indiana is 3-15 in non-conference play.
It'll be a Uden sisters kind of showdown.
A reunion.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a stretch.
Oof.
Yeet.
Oof.
Maryland will come to
hip with the
town
kids.
in April. Maryland is 6-14 in non-conference. Michigan will go to Iowa for 3 games. Iowa is 5-7 in non-conference. So,
But there's something about a night game at Kinnick.
Trap game.
Yeah.
I didn't look into their softball stadium's name.
Trap game.
So
It's also Kinnick. It's all Kinnick.
So
It's a multi-purpose facility.
So do we think that this is a good thing that Michigan is playing against the dregs of the Big Ten? I mean, it's less of a chance to hurt their bottom line, their win-loss record, and
Yeah, but you definitely have quite the wake-up call, as we've seen, I think, in past seasons, when you finally get to in last season's case, if you got to like or 2 seasons ago, Minnesota in the title game, or if you get to you finally see somebody good after seeing people that were really not good for such a long time. Throws you off your balance a little bit, I think.
I mean, 2 years ago they still made the Women's College World Series, though.
Right, sure.
I mean, last year they just were never a good enough team, but even if they win a few of those Big Ten games, you maybe don't end up in Washington for the regional, and maybe you can catch fire and a sort of easier setup. All I'm saying is that,
By the way,
maybe it doesn't matter that they get battle-tested in conference.
I have promised that if we get to Oklahoma City, I'm riding a live bull.
Yeah.
I'm going to find
saw
one.
that.
That's really dangerous.
Yeah. So, just so you know.
elsewhere in the Big Ten,
Train scheme.
we have a couple more points to point out here. Just in terms of other.
You didn't do all this research for nothing.
Just in terms of other Big Ten contenders, Minnesota might not be good.
They're not.
They're 12-7, but if you look at their actual resume, they don't have really any good wins. Kentucky's their best one, but they got swept by FSU, swept by Notre Dame, beaten by UCLA, beaten by San Diego State, beaten
Could
by
be
Long Beach
Michigan.
State. Yeah, so they're not great at the current moment. Wisconsin is like capable of the big win, but also the really bad loss at just very mediocre in non-conference. Ohio State, once again, they have a pretty non-conference record, but they didn't play anybody, so to be decided about that. And then, Michigan State, just kind of right around 500, but they've gotten some bad losses. They're 9-9 overall. I mean, this is really the type of Big Ten schedule where Michigan should come close to sweeping all the way through the 23 games.
Yeah, call them an F-250 because they're going to truck their way right through the Big Ten. That's all I got. Yeah, I was good for one line.
In the preseason, we looked at the Big Ten and said it was probably going to be easy, and so far through these first 4 or so weeks of non-conference play, it has confirmed that.
You know what you have to do if you drive an F-250, JP?
I don't know. Tell me, Texas.
You have to keep your foot on the gas.
There you go. I like having Lucas here now. We finally got him from the swim team. I like it. All right, Drain, great work.
Yep.
Good job,
It's
Alex.
really good work. Very appreciative of that work. It's a meritocracy here.
I need things to do. I like researching things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried doing research, but I lost the energy.
Yeah.
It was only when I was free at work. There was nothing else to do.
Okay, so I've got a quick one for all of you. So I was in Sweden, and I was talking with my host family about what I do, and they asked about softball, and they didn't know what softball was. I do reiterate, Sweden does have a softball team, but they didn't know what the game was. So if you had to describe the game of softball to somebody who has never seen it before and doesn't know how it works, what would you say in just 2 sentences?
Are we assuming they've seen baseball?
Yes, that's the way I went, was baseball, but different and better.
Okay, I'll go first. Baseball for girls with a green ball.
But, it's hard to say just, for girls, because softball is...
Now, if it's just 2 sentences, I can use a ton of commas, right? And
Ye-
semicolons.
That's how it works. College, yeah.
Yeah. Baseball only with shorter bases, smaller fields, different sized ball. I'd go on and on. I could name every rule
That's fair.
in
I would
one
call
sentence.
I would call it condensed, more engaging, family-er friendly.
Family-er friendly.
I also said, I speak to the European side of folks when I say this, kickball without your feet,
Mm.
you know?
That's
Kickball's
close.
brutal.
Let me say kickball is maybe one of the worst sports I've ever had to suffer through watching in my life.
I love kickball,
Just
man.
say-
Yeah, you know.
No, they take-
I was not athletic as a kid, but like for some reason I could kick a
I'm not
kickball
saying-
decently
I'm
far.
not saying playing kickball. I'm saying like having to watch kickball. They have.
Oh yeah, no.
My sister played kickball back home, and those parents, I have never seen parents get so fired up about a second grade sport in my
Were
entire
you
life.
better than the contestants, the people playing? Were you
What?
better at kickball?
Well, like watching like the little girls out there, like
Yeah,
playing the
yeah.
dirt.
That's what's most frustrating to me watching little kids play sports because I want to go out there and
Just
show them how it's done.
Dude, middle school kickball has got to be one of the most like. I mean, just for like a kid like me, like watching how intense the parents can do. They have a state tournament where you have to travel all over the state, and the parents
Wow.
are just as crazy as like AAU basketball. I mean, it's bad.
Tuesday in El Paso, Wednesday in Corpus Christi.
Hey, that's okay. That's like impossible. Like that's literally impossible.
I'm picturing more like dusty, like a Thursday morning in Denton, Texas. But anyways, also stay alert. I went to a handball game while I was there.
Oh, that's hype.
Handball, pretty lit.
That's hype.
We might have to get a handball podcast going.
Oh, let's get it.
Yeah.
Did you ever
Anyways,
play kickball in like middle school, and there'd be the one kid that played like soccer goalkeeper, and then they just like
And could
walk
just
in-
pummel
yeah,
it?
just like into the forest.
yeah.
Tell you what, one thing we did at middle school was all the girls at my school that played in this kickball league were like, "Oh, we're so much better than you at kickball." So they challenged all the guys to a
Uh-oh.
kickball game, and didn't go too well for him. Just
He
put that
kept
out
his
there.
foot on the gas.
Foot on the gas, baby.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Do we have anything else as we sit down here in techno music closet chamber from hell?
I guess techno is probably the most appropriate genre.
Yeah.
I don't feel too compelled to sing it out.
I just want to know what
Yeah.
Brain
We're
is
going
sitting
to.
in front of right now.
If you don't join me, I'm gonna do it myself.
Are you
I
really?
had the theme song in my head for like a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, recently.
All right. So I think that's gonna do it for episode 4, the ragtaggest episode we've ever had. Picks to come on the Twitter at WCBN Sports. No broadcast this weekend, but we'll be back next week with episode 5, and then Lucas and Morris will be heading out to Oxford in 7 days' time.
Second trip to Ohio ever.
Yeah. So that'll do it for Lucas Vargas, Alex Strain, Morris Fabry. I'm Jeremy Parks. For East of the Rockies, the Michigan Student Softball Podcast. As always, we leave you with a good night and a go blue. Dun, dun, dun. We're talking softball from Maine to San Diego, talking softball. Mattingly and Canseco, Ken Griffey's grotesquely swollen jaw. Steve Saxon is running with the law. We're talking Homer, Ozzy and the Straw. Dun, 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 dun. We're talking softball.